going on, hockey fans, and welcome to the Saturday afternoon edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. We are sponsored by Vivid Picks. We'll have a nice offer for you guys later in the day. Nice little slate tonight. Joining me as always, Slim Cliffy. What's going on?
Not a whole lot, man. Should say, I guess Solemn Remembrance Day / Veterans Day today. It's Veterans Day, right? This weekend in America.
Yep.
Yeah. Pretty interesting slate last night. I mean, I got crushed. I did a warm-up swap to the new Buffalo top line with Dylan Cousins there. I was telling you, when Buffalo scored their first goal, the Henry Jokiharju shot from the point, I thought Dylan Cousins had poked it out to Owen Power, who passed it over Jokiharju. They didn't give Cousins a point. I thought Tage Thompson might have deflected it on the way in, but he didn't. I was like, all right, the line that I swapped to was on the ice for a goal, and none of the forwards got in on it, and it was both defensemen instead. I was like, I'm not winning tonight. So I knew my night was shot at that point. I did not cash. How did you do?
I didn't cash either. The one thing I did do right was play two Vegas defensemen, like I talked about. Martinez and Pietrangelo combined for 62.8 DraftKings points. So once in a while, we'll have some good stuff. You know what I mean? We'll have to take the victory laps when we can get it. But I played Toronto 1, and holy crap, did they suck. But, you know, it is what it is. I took the day off from the big dog plus money prop of the night. I've been cursing whoever I pick, so I'm taking the day off from that. I've been bad. I'll be back. Don't worry. We'll have a hot streak. If you're telling me, I apologize, but, you know. We did have some winners in our Discord last night, and let me talk about that. I put it in the notes so I didn't forget anybody. Let me scroll up here. Okay. We had BJLT, New York Knicks. He won the $5 po check for $5,000. Congrats to you. He was a bit tilted at some of the line changes, but he fell asleep and won 5K. He pulled the Jake Hari. If you pull a Jake Hari, is usually a good thing. He falls asleep. Well, maybe not now that he's a dad, but he would go to sleep at like 8:15 p.m. Eastern and wake up to like thousands of dollars. But congrats to you, BLJ. Not easy to win 150 max. You did it. Matt's Poker in our Discord, he won a GPP for 600. I'm assuming it was the $9 one. I'm not sure which one it was. And then great screen name, by the way, D-Town Gigolos. He won the 333 by 18 points for 20K. He said he doesn't play NHL often, but he is a member, and when he uses the tools and that kind of stuff, won big. It is nice to wake up to screenshots of people in the community doing well, even if we didn't do well ourselves. It's always interesting to see what kind of information people take from the shows. And like, yeah, it's easy for us to be like, oh yeah, we should have listened to ourselves, but we're talking for an hour. And these people take this information and they win with it. And it just feels good. Feels good.
Yeah, it does. I mean, congrats to the winners. I mean, three different winners, 3 different GPPs, all on DraftKings. Like that's pretty good for a single night. That's not going to happen all the time, certainly, but great lineups. I noticed that he got the winner of the poke check, did it with a Leo Carlson one-off hat trick. I've noticed people seem to be not playing a lot of 3-2-1, but some 3-2-1 stacks that are getting there. And they can get frustrating. Don't get me wrong. You know, you play the wrong play or you leave the wrong guy off of your 2-man stack and he's the one that explodes, or you go with 3-2-1 and all 3 guys from your 2-man stack would have exploded and the solo doesn't. But, you know, there's more than one way to stack and to winning to take down a GPP. So, you know, I typically still play a 3-3 or a 3-2-1, but there are many ways to skin a cat, as we might say. But congratulations on the wins. Hopefully we can get some more here tonight on this 10-game slate.
Yeah, my stat corrected victory on like almost opening night was a 3-2-1 as well. I like running at least like, I don't know. We'll do some strategy on a shorter slate. There's a lot of games here. But But yeah, congrats to all the winners. And hopefully there'll be more of them. We can talk about it on Tuesday on the show. But there's a bunch of you here. Make sure to smash that like. Make sure to subscribe. Keeps up with all of your shows, DFS offers, giveaways, etc., etc. We also have everything on our podcast channel. So if you don't like YouTube, you can check us out on the podcast channels. Leave us a 5-star review. We have the Hall of Fame. So if these guys, I think the Poke Check has over, the Poke Check has over 5,000. I'm pretty sure he has a stochastic avatar. If he does, he can tweet the win to @StochasticHOF on Twitter and win a free month of a stochastic package of your choice. So that's not bad. Pretty good stuff. But we should get into this slate because we have 10 games, a lot of high totals, a lot of teams on a back-to-back, a lot to get through, lots to talk about. Let's do it. Boston Bruins with a 3.4 total heading into Montreal. The Canadiens have a 2.6 total. It feels like the Bruins play the Canadiens every night. I don't know why. This might even be the first time they played this season. But it just feels like they're always playing each other.
Yeah, it is the first game against each other this season.
Yeah, maybe it's just because it's an original 6 matchup. That's probably what's going on in my head. Top line for the Bruins, Pasternak, Marchand, Pavel Zacha. Getting a pretty heavy ownership. They do have positive leverage per our top sacks tool. Good spot. Like Zacha started off a little bit slow. He's been turning it on. Interesting to see pretty heavy negative ownership on the third line with DeBrusk and Heinen, because in the last game, Charlie Coyle put up a 51 spot on DraftKings with JVR and Frederick. Like, that line has been good, and they're 11,200 against the Habs team that is fun offensively, but defensively, it's still a work in progress, we'll say. So I like Boston 1. I like even some of the Boston depth here. No ownership on the Habs. It depends what they did, because the last game they went Dvorak, Caulfield, Slavkovsky. Who knows what the lines are going to be? I'm not sure if they skated. If they do go back to Suzuki, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, maybe I'll have a little bit of interest in that in MME. But this is a Boston game for me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote up Pavel Zacha in the picks article, free to read, over at stochastic.com for, a couple reasons. One, obviously he's not the goal scorer on that line. It is David Pastrnak. In fact, I was looking over the projections. Here are the winger projections for DraftKings tonight, and Pastrnak is projected for almost 6 more points than the next closest winger. Like, that kind of gap is what you see on a 4-game slate when it's Connor McDavid and then a bunch of teams or something like that. It like what Pastrnak is doing this season is just incredible. But I wrote up Zacha because his price has dropped on DraftKings. He's down to $5K. And Montreal is one of the more penalized teams in the league so far this season. They've taken they're giving up the second most power plays per game, 4.4 per game. Only Anaheim gives up more. So of the 20 teams playing tonight, Montreal is the team giving up the most power plays. So it should mean a lot of power play time for that top line. They're perfectly correlated on the top unit. Now they're going to be popular. You mentioned Jake DeBrusk line coming in way over owned. Like, all the lines are going to be owned. Top line 14% on DraftKings. Third line 7%. Not as much on the Coyle, Frederick, Van Riemsdyk line. I think that's going to come up, especially where Van Riemsdyk is the guy that plays on the power play unit. So I think that's going to come up a bit. Like, that Coyle line has been pretty good offensively. What I think is important to note is that they haven't been very good defensively, but part of that is I wonder if it's just missing Charlie McAvoy, right? Because Charlie McAvoy is back in the lineup for Boston tonight. He had been suspended for 4 games. Got to think he's going to be a little bit rested and, kind of ready to go here. So that's a big boost to the defensive profile of the Bruins. Like, if he were still out, I would kind of be contemplating something on the Montreal side here. Most likely the Monahan-Gallagher line, but I would be contemplating something. With McAvoy back, like, it's a pretty brutal matchup. Like Boston does take their fair share of penalties as well. They're just under 4 power play opportunities given to the opponent per game. Like, they're top 5 in the league, or bottom 5, depending how you want to look at it. But with Montreal splitting up their lines, like there's a lot of uncertainty that any of the lines are going to stick together. Because like once you break up Suzuki and Caulfield, like everything else is on the table, right? Like that's kind of the way to look at it. I thought Dvorak and Caulfield looked good together. I think, playing Slafkovsky or playing Newhook with Suzuki is probably a good thing, like play to their strengths, which is speed. But I just don't know if this is the matchup to do it. So I think for me, this is Boston 1. If you want to slide in Van Riemsdyk, just make it a full power play stack. I think you can do that as well. Like, not only does Montreal take a lot of penalties, they're not good at killing off the ones that they take, right? Like they're giving up over 1 power play goal against per game. It's a tremendous power play spot for Boston. I like, to me, this is a Boston 1 game, just because of how good of a power play spot it is. Brad Marchand, last thing I'll mention, Brad Marchand, like he wasn't shooting earlier in the season. He's up over 17 shot attempts per 60 minutes so far this season. I think that's near a career high or just surpassing a career high. So he's been shooting the puck a lot more, especially over his last 8-10 games. So I really like the way that top line from Boston is playing. So it's Boston 1 for me in this. And I don't think not a whole lot for Montreal.
Yeah. Real quick before we move on, it was a good question. Any tips on defensemen and cash lineups, 2 spend downs or 1 spend up, etc.? Thanks, guys. I enjoyed the breakdown. Thank you for the question. That's a good question. It's slate dependent, but I think you got to look at guys with high floors, either a power play quarterback or a cheap guy who has a high block shot chance, getting some guy who's going to get the shot block bonus, etc. But I'd, if you're trying to jam in studs and need cheap guys, just look for guys with a high floor who has a chance of getting the block bonus, maybe involved offensively.
Yeah, I'm not a cash game player. I will say like the defensemen I would avoid are kind of the guys in that middle price range that don't put up a ton of peripherals and don't play the power play. So like I think a good example tonight would be Philip Hronik from Vancouver. Plays on a great defensive pair with Quinn Hughes. He's going to probably have a pretty good offensive season. But he's not a guy that takes a lot of shots. He's not a guy that blocks a lot of shots, and he's not on the top power play unit. So like those types of defensemen are ones that I would generally avoid. And your description of the guys to use is pretty apt.
Yeah, I would use Quinn Hughes for cash over Hronik, and if you can't get to Quinn Hughes, I would go down to like Tyler Myers or something, like those type of players.
Yeah.
But thank you for the question. That was a good question. Calgary Flames with a 3.1 total heading into Ottawa. The Senators have a 3.5 total. Okay, so we've been on the I forget what's that horn? The klaxon.
I was going to say like a flugel, but I think that's a little bit bigger.
Yeah. For Dustin Wolf to start, and he's finally starting tonight. But of course, it's back-to-back on the road for Calgary in Ottawa, and they move Tarasenko to the top line with Norris and Tkachuk. I like that line, but like I also like Dustin Wolf. Like I'll let you talk about Dustin Wolf's numbers in the minor leagues. He's the back like save percentage or whatever, like AHL goalie of the year, whatever it is. But like Tarasenko moving to the top line is interesting because I was telling you before the show, it kind of reminds me when Tarasenko moved to the line with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider. Like you get Tkachuk, who's the net front guy. Tarasenko's the shooter. Norris is the playmaker, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's going to be a good line. It's just like I'm not sure this is the best matchup for it. One, Wolf is one of the best, if not the best goalie prospect in the NHL or in the minors right now, and he's getting the start. Two, like Calgary, I know they gave up 4 goals to the Leafs last night, but Vladar, not very good. Like, I want to play Ottawa, but I think I'm saving it for a different matchup. I think you can get to an MME because there's not a ton of ownership. Oh man, like I am very conflicted. I wish this game was on the slate. I kind of like the Calgary second line. That Connor Zary dude, he's like he went from the minors to being like the best winger on the team, not named Huberdeau or Mangiapane. Ottawa's bad defensively. They take a bunch of penalties. Zari's on the top power play unit. If you play on FanDuel, sucks for you because he's not in the player pool still. But like, I kind of like Calgary too here. I do like Ottawa in the nutshell. I don't think I'm going to get to them in 1 to 3.
Yeah, that's the whole problem with Wolf getting called up. It's like we finally get our wish, but it might kind of screw us here tonight. Yeah, Dustin Wolf, he's 22 years old now. Like, he wasn't somebody that was like considered like a super high-end prospect, but at a certain point, like once you're 22 years old and you're the best minor league goalie, or you're the best goalie in the AHL 2 years in a row, and then this year I think he has a .924 save percentage in his first like 7 or 8 games in the AHL. So like, you know, it's like what took them so long for this to happen. Like, if Markstrom was still healthy and Jacob Markstrom was in net, or they're running Dan Vladar back to back, like I'm pretty sure I would be playing Ottawa here tonight. And that's the problem I'm running into, is like, I don't want to put too much stock into a goalie that's not played at the NHL level. And, you know, maybe he just has a bad game. Like, he could literally end up a Hall of Famer and just get absolutely blown out of the water here tonight. That, you know, those two things aren't necessarily correlated, right? I do agree that I like Tarasenko on the top line. I was looking at some of their like underlying numbers, I guess, today. Like, Tarasenko leads the healthy Ottawa forwards, because Ridley Grigg is technically at the top, but he's injured. Leads the healthy Ottawa forwards in scoring chance assists per minute so far this season. Like, it's not Stützle, it's not Giroux, it's Tarasenko. Like, there's probably a reason why him and Grigg and Kubalik were playing so well together on the third line, right? He brings a playmaking dimension that Drake Batherson just doesn't. And I think that's just going to help, especially Josh Norris, but the entire top line be good offensively. Like, I think it's a fine matchup for them going up against Calgary. Whether they're going up against the first line or the second line, it doesn't really matter to me. Here's the thing with the Flames is, like, all their problems were goaltending related. Like, yes, obviously there's going to be some defensive miscues and turnovers that are going to cause goals against and stuff like that. But at worst, they're a middle-of-the-road defensive team at 5-on-5. It's just that them and Edmonton are at the bottom of the league in 5-on-5 save percentage. Like, one thing I always say is, and I guess I don't say it, like a lot of people have said it, like, nothing will make a team look worse than bad goaltending. And that's pretty much all that's really happened, is that Vladar and Markstrom can't save a puck to save their lives. If Dustin Wolf is like even just an average NHL goalie, this Calgary team is probably a playoff team. Like, that's how good they can be. It's not a bad spot for Ottawa, one, all things, you know, all that aside. It's just they're really coming in with more ownership than I want. Like, the ownership isn't bad. 5% on the top line, 3.4% on the second line per the top stacks tool. Like, that's fine. But there are other lines that I want to play that have a little bit of a better sample behind them. Like, you know, we'll talk about Edmonton later. I know Edmonton's struggling on their own, but we'll talk about them later. Like, Carolina's top line is going to come in with like a third of the ownership of this Ottawa top line. And they're playing against Jonas Johansson, who's allowed, I think, 18 goals in his last 4 starts. So, like, there are just other spots that I think are better than Ottawa here tonight. So I do like Ottawa 1 in a nutshell. I would play them above Ottawa 2. I just don't think tonight's necessarily the night for it. On the Calgary side, like, I agree with you on Calgary too. I wrote up Connor Zary in the picks article. He had like 68 points in his last 78 AHL games. He's a first-round pick from 3 years ago. Like, this isn't a guy just coming out of nowhere. He really good numbers in a small sample with Kadri, 55 minutes together, 73 shot attempts per 60 minutes, 3.4 expected goals per 60 minutes. Like, they've just been really good. So I actually like Calgary 2 the best in this game. You know, if you're playing 150 lineups or whatever, obviously you're going to play Ottawa. It's just a matter of how much. I just don't think I'm going to play them in my single entry.
Yeah, they need to call up Coronado so they can run Coronado Zary Popsicle Stick, or whatever his name is. It's like something like Popsicle Stick. I'm sorry. I'm just bad with names. And it's Popsicle Stick.
Okay.
Our resident quick party says Ottawa at home, the biggest cowards and frauds to ever skate. Well, you know,
I feel bad for the guy because he's also a Blue Jays fan. So, like, it was, you know, not a great season for them, not a great start for Ottawa. It's just been a really bad 6 or 7 sports months for him. So, you know,
Pospisil. Sorry, I give people nicknames, and he's Popsicle Stick. But yeah, Ottawa. needs to get rid of DJ Smith. The Blue Jays need to get rid of their whole organization. I don't want to go off on a large tangent here, but it had to suck watching the Diamondbacks in the World Series with the guys that they traded to the Diamondbacks for like pennies.
Me and my buddies have a text thread where we would just text each other what Gurriel and Moreno hit the night before in case anybody missed it. Like that's how upset we were. So
it's just pain. Like I know pain. I'm a Jets fan, and we both had back problems, so we know pain. But like, yeah. All right. Okay. Let's pull it back in. Been drinking Arizona iced tea. I'm a little hyper. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.4 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.4 total. Let's talk about those Hurricanes that you just mentioned before. There's not a lot of ownership on either side of this game. I watched some of that Hurricanes-Panthers game last night. Easily the worst Canes game of the season. They looked horrible. And that's bad for this reason. They blended the absolute living piss out of the lines last night. So we have no idea what the lines are going to be because they didn't skate today. They started yesterday with Aho, Jarvis, and Netchus, and then Kotkaniemi, Svechnikov, Teravainen. Whether they start like that tonight, to be determined. It is an early game, but like if we get like you're saying, like you're gonna see the top line of Aho, Svechnikov, and like Jarvis or something, and just jam them in because they're going to be a very low owned combo against Jonas Johansson, who's been terrible. On the flip side is like I do really like Carolina tonight, by the way, depending on the line combinations. On the flip side, it's even interesting. It's interesting too because Carolina looked terrible last night. They're back to back on the road. Kucherov's been nuts. They are 21,400. It's a bit pricey going into the Hurricanes. I think an MME getting over the field on that projected ownership would be a play for me. I just don't know if I can get there in 1-3.
So I didn't watch that game. I was watching my beloved Buffalo Sabres fail me once again.
Same. The amount of futures I have on the Sabres is sickening.
One thing that I did notice looking through the game logs was the ice time from last night. Seth Jarvis led the forwards in ice time at 18:03, and he played most of the game with Jordan Stahl after getting moved down the lineup. So the guy that was on the top line ended up on the checking line, but played the most minutes of anybody in the lineup. I think 11 out of their 12 forwards played between 12 and 18 minutes last night. Like that's a problem. Like that's a big problem. Like I'm not expecting, Aho and Jarvis and those guys to play 20 minutes night in and night out. But this was a 2-1 game at the end of the first period and a 3-2 game at the end of the second period. And the guy on the winger on the checking line ended up with the most minutes of all their forwards. Like that's kind of the problem with Carolina. There are a lot of problems with Carolina for DFS. One of them is that you almost never really know how the ice time is going to work out. It's almost like Seattle. Like we talk about that a lot with Seattle. Like there are some games where Yanni Gourde, who's not even on a power play and he's on the third line, will play like 22 minutes. You won't see something crazy like that from Carolina, but you will see games where, Stefan Nason plays more than Teuvo Teravainen, or Jesperi Kotkaniemi plays more than Sebastian Aho, or, Andrei Svechnikov plays 14 minutes. Like it's going to happen all the time with that team. The thing is like, yes, they mixed up their lines quite a bit, but they did tend to leave Aho and Natchez together, and then Kotkaniemi and Teravainen together. So I think you might be able to rely on those pairs. I do like Aho and Natchez here tonight. Like it's tough because it's back to back on the road. I'll take your word for it that they look bad last night. They can't look worse tonight. Like, can they?
Well, you don't have to take my word for it. I was watching Corey Schneider, or I butchered his last name, live tweet the game, and he was like pulling his hair out if he has hair.
Okay.
He's a big Canes guy.
Yeah. Okay. And here's the thing is like going into Tampa Bay often uses the Nick Paul line as a shutdown line. Nick Paul line doesn't have Brandon Hagel anymore. Without Brandon Hagel, they're up over 60 shot attempts against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Jonas Johansson, like I think he's just becoming the goalie that everybody kind of expected him to. So I'm actually, did they confirm that it was Jonas Johansson starting tonight? I didn't see that.
Let me look.
No, he's not confirmed. Like it wouldn't surprise me if they went to Matt Tompkins.
Yeah.
Because like I said, Johansson's given up 18 goals in 4 games. At a certain point, you can't rely on your team to score 5 or 6 goals every night. Either way, like Aho and Natchez have been pretty good offensively together so far this season in a small sample. 78 shot attempts per 60 minutes. It's not surprising for a Carolina team. I'm kind of tempted to play whatever the top line ends up being at warmups. I think it's going to be Aho and Natchez plus. Like they might move Jarvis back. I'm hoping they move Svechnikov up. Like that's kind of what I'm waiting for at this point. But we'll see at warm-ups. But yeah, I do like Carolina 1. I don't think the matchup's really that bad. And the Tampa Bay goaltending is starting to get as bad as the Carolina goaltending is. On the Tampa Bay side, like I really do like that top line. I like that they put Hagel back there. 3.2 expected goals, 5.3 actual goals per 60 minutes so far this year with Hagel up there. Hagel is second on the team in scoring chance contributions behind only Kucherov, which means he's contributing more to the offense than Stamkos at 5-on-5, than Stamkos, than Braden Point, than any of those guys. So I really do like the Tampa top line here. I think that would be more of an MME play for me. I don't think I'm going to get to them in single entry. I think I actually like the Carolina side here better.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. I think one off and Kucherov in a single entry, always fine. But like, I don't know if I'm going to spend $21,400 on Tampa Bay tonight when there's just way better matchups for cheaper. Vancouver Canucks, 3.3 total. Heading into Toronto, the Leafs have a 3.5 total. Leafs blew a 4-1 lead last night. That was the bad. The good, Willie Nylander is ridiculous. He's incredible. He's going to look good in a different uniform at the trade deadline, wherever that may be. But, yeah. Oh, man. Like, I want to go back to that Nylander line. Like, Nylander was the best player on the ice by far. Vancouver, I would imagine that Toronto line is going to avoid the Hughes-Hronik pairing. So, like, 18,800 to get that line, I'm in on. Now, it is Leafs back-to-back, so Samsonite. I was way off. Samsonov is in that tonight. There's no ownership on the Canucks. And I know they're not great 5-on-5, but they have been good on the power play. There's no ownership here. I don't mind going to either of the top 2 lines. I don't mind a power play stack either. Whether I get there in 1 to 3 is to be determined, but I do have them circled.
Yeah, so as we were mentioning on the show on Thursday, I think, when Vancouver's on the road, the Hughes-Hronik pairing plays a lot more with JT Miller than they will with Elias Pettersson. That's pretty important for this game tonight because the Matthews line is probably going to go out against Pettersson, and that means the Matthews line is probably not going to see much of Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronik at least. Yeah, at least not like every shift. Like it won't be like a shutdown shift type thing. And if you look at the numbers for any of the top 2 lines with Quinn Hughes off the ice, I'm not exaggerating when I say some of the defensive numbers get twice as bad. Like expected goals, shot attempts, et cetera, anywhere from like 70% worse to literally 100% worse. And that's the matchup that Matthews is going to get. He's going to be going into the Vancouver top line with Elias Pettersson. They have 2.7 expected goals against. Again, those numbers get considerably worse without Quinn Hughes on the blue line behind them. And Quinn Hughes, like I was saying, doesn't play as much with Pettersson as he does with JT Miller when they're on the road. So I think I would prefer the Toronto top line here tonight. Like they've looked good with Knies, 77 shot attempts per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Knies was around 19 minutes last night. Like I know it was an overtime game, but I think he only got 1 shift in overtime anyway. So, he's probably going to play like 18 minutes if they're not going to run them ragged and then the top guys are over 20. Vancouver penalty kill, like it's bad. It was bad last year. Yeah, it was bad last year. It got better towards the end of the season. This year, 3rd most shot attempts against, most shots allowed per minute while on the penalty kill is the Vancouver Canucks. It is not Minnesota or San Jose or Buffalo. It's Vancouver. So you got the two guys on the top power play unit. The line is still under 20K. They're not coming in with a ton of ownership, 3.5% per top stacks. Even if that comes up to like 5-6%, I really don't care. I think you can leave Knees off, nice, and put Nylander there, just turn it into a power play stack. Like, it feels pretty hard to fade Nylander right now with the way that he's playing. But I do like the top line matchup a lot better than I like the second line one here tonight. So it's Matthews, Marner, nice for me. Like, this has to stop for Vancouver eventually, right? Like, they can't keep doing this. I was looking earlier. Brock Besser and JT Miller are shooting a combined 29% so far this season. Like, that feels patently absurd. And I don't have a problem going to Vancouver just for ownership purposes. I just feel like at a certain point they've got to run out. I would play the JT Miller line because they do play more with Quinn Hughes, and playing with Quinn Hughes means better defensively and better offensively, and probably by a lot. So it's Miller, Besser, DiGiuseppe for me. The Toronto second line has been pretty good defensively with Tyler Bertuzzi there, but as you mentioned, the Toronto goaltending has not been good so far this year. So Vancouver 2 for me. I like the JT Miller line in this matchup, but it is the Toronto top line, the Matthews line, that I like the best by quite a bit here.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I also really like Demko in this game.
Ray Rock saying Demko, it's like, you don't like facing, like, he's been like going back to last year when he came back from injury. It's like 30 games now. He's been really, really good. It's just, you can get a Matthews line that's under 20K for under 5% on a 10-game slate at home. Sometimes your hand's kind of forced. Toronto one's one of my favorite tops, like, expensive stacks on the slate here today.
Yeah, I played Toronto one last night. Matthews was 21%, Marner was 14%, Knees was 5%. So, like, Marner played almost 26 minutes, did nothing with it. Good stuff. He sucks.
That's a classic Mitch Marner game.
Yeah. I tout Mitch Marner. He sucks. And he wonders why I make signs about him. Anyway, hello, hockey fans. If you use the link in the description box below, you get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. If you're thinking about going premium, I don't know why you're still thinking about it. Just click that link in the description below. It'll take you to the landing page you need to go. You can also add on Fantasy Cruncher, but what you get with it are player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and the Discord. Lots of fun in the Discord. Lots of winners last night. Cliffy's showing all the tools up on the screen right now that we reference from time to time on the show. So yeah, click that link in the description below. Get in that Discord, get those premium tools, and start winning. Also, I'll say it every day, Cliffy's article is free to read on Stokastic.com. Our show is always going to be free, but you'll just add on those premium tools. Let's move on to the next one. Another game I wish that wasn't on the slate. The Washington Capitals with a 2.6 total heading into Long Island. Miserable experience there. The Islanders have a 3.3 total. Looks like Simone Holmstrom's going to the top line with Horvat and Barzal. Wahlstrom, I think, is out.
Yeah.
I kind of wish if Wahlstrom is going to be out, they would put Julien Gauthier in the lineup and put him up there. He has some speed. I don't know. I'm just searching here. But it's interesting because Wilson, Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, back-to-back on the road going into Long Island, negative leverage? No thanks. They're fine in MME, one lineup. No thanks. The line that I'm interested in this game, Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall. Yeah, they're coming in with negative leverage, but it's not to the point where I'm going to go like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be duped immediately if I put them in my lineup. They're 13,600. Nelson is Nelson, man. He's had 2 back-to-back really good seasons. He's having another good season this year. Him and Palmieri on the top power play unit. Washington, I guess it's going to be Kemper tonight. Like, they're going to be vying for a lottery pick. I really like Islanders' second line here.
Yeah, I don't know who the answer is on the top line. Like, I kind of like Hudson Fasching. He had some pretty good numbers last year, but I don't know if they have an answer internally for somebody to play on that top line, but they got to figure something out because they have not been playing well. I was looking at the numbers for the top line with Simon Holmstrom there. Now, he played there last year after they got Horvat, but when Barzal was injured. The offensive numbers were actually pretty good, 3.5 expected goals for per 60 minutes. But again, that's with I think it was with Anders Lee on the left wing.
Yeah,
and he's a guy like they'll always have good expected goals numbers with Anders Lee on the ice because he's a guy that plays the net front and gets his shots from like 6 feet away from the goal line. But they don't score a lot, and they were at 2.2 goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5. That's kind of been the problem for the Islanders top line basically all season. Like once they start scoring, they're probably going to start filling the net. I don't know if it's going to be with Simon Holmstrom there. So I think I agree with you. It's going to be Islanders too for me. I'll bring up the Islanders top stacks real quick. There's the top line, 4% ownership, 5% ownership on the second line. Pierre Engvall obviously back in the lineup. Like I was telling you guys this morning, the entire Islanders second line has fewer giveaways than just Matt Barzal this year. And that they picked out Engvall for that one turnover that cost them a goal in a game they were already losing to scratch him. Whatever. They're phenomenal together. 3.8 expected goals for, 3.8 actual goals for. I did write up Brock Nelson in the picks article today, free to read over Stokastic. 3.4 shots per game so far this season. He's picked up his shot volume. The line is generating a lot. There is negative leverage, but they're still under 5% with a 2% top stack percentage. And it's a 10-game slate. There are plenty of ways to get different. I do like that second line here tonight. I agree with you. On the Washington side, I don't necessarily hate the top line here tonight. Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, Wilson. I just don't think it's a good spot for it. Like you said, back-to-back on the road. Like it's Varlamov and net, but Varlamov's been better than Sorokin this year. And Varlamov's just been good for a few, basically since he got to New York, right? The problem is like Sorokin's just usually been better. So that they'll usually play Sorokin as a starter. But Varlamov's still been a good goalie. So it's one of those bad chalk situations, I think, that you and I talk about. Like there are times, like I think the Islanders second line is kind of good chalk in this situation. Like they're at home, they're the rested team. Engvall's extra rested, I guess. They're not that expensive at 13,600. Like you can turn it into a power play stack by taking Engvall out and putting in, Horvat or something like that. I think that's fine for chalk. I think bad chalk is playing a line that might be 10% on the road in a back-to-back going into Long Island facing Varlamov. Like I think that's kind of the difference here. So nothing for me from the Washington side. I agree with you on Islanders too.
Yeah, Lane Lambert, interesting coach. He kind of reminds me of like at Thanksgiving, you have that weird uncle. You're not exactly sure what he does, but he's just full of shit. Like that's what Lane Lambert reminds me of. Let's move on to the next one. Buffalo Sabres, 3 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins have a 3.9 total. I hear Jake Harry's teeth grinding that Pittsburgh has the highest total on the slate. They're not getting much ownership. They're the new come for the expected goals, stay for the shutout team. Man. Buffalo back-to-back on the road here. Levi went last night, so it's going to probably be Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen tonight. 5.6% ownership on Pit 1 with those expected numbers. Like, at some point, maybe it's tonight, maybe it's March, maybe it's 2031, they're going to have a monster game. ¿Por qué no esta noche? ¿Por qué not? How come not tonight? I just wanted to go off on Spanish there. Like, I really like Pittsburgh 1 here. I really like Pittsburgh 2 here. It's going to be interesting to see what Buffalo does with their lines because JJ Peterka moved up with Tage Thompson and Jeff Skinner and looked good. So if that is the line tonight, like Pittsburgh ain't nothing special defensively, I would probably have some interest in the Thompson, Skinner, Peterka line.
Yeah, but don't forget that Alex Tuck is probably coming back tonight. They said he's not going to play both games of the back-to-back this weekend. He didn't play last night. They just sent Matthew Savoie back down to the WHL this afternoon.
He played 3 minutes last night, by the way.
I mean, he's getting the NHL paycheck. So yeah, the fact that they sent Savoie back to junior and that they said that Tuck is not going to play both games of the back-to-back and he didn't play last night seems like Tuck is going to play tonight. I'm wondering if they don't just put Tuck on the second line with one of Cousins, or on the third line with one of Cousins or Middlestat, and try to just see if Peterka will work out long-term on the top line. Like, we just will not know until warm-up. Pittsburgh won. Like, they have been scoring. I think that's something that we probably shouldn't lose sight of. Is I did write them up in the picks article today. Every player on that line is a point per game player. Russ is like 12 points in 12 games. I think Crosby's at 14 and Gensel's at 15. Like, they're all point per game or better so far this season. A big problem. One of the problems has been the power play. It's not been like the power play was a problem last year, and they went and got Erik Karlsson in part to help fix it, and has not even been as good as last year. So I think that's why they're not necessarily racking up the goals. But since they moved Riley Smith to the top power play unit, you mentioned this on the last couple of shows the Penguins have been there. They have looked better, and they are generating more, 13.5% more shot attempts with Riley Smith on the top power play unit than Rickard Rakell. So this is a pretty good power play spot for Pittsburgh. Buffalo is one of the most penalized teams in the league. They're giving up the fourth most power plays of any team in the NHL this season. The only teams above them are Anaheim, Montreal, and Colorado. The penalty kill has been fine, but they're also back-to-back on the road. So I wrote up Pittsburgh won for a reason in my picks article today. This is a pretty good spot for them. I do think Buffalo's better defensively than they were in the first, 4 or 5 games of the year. I think it bears out when you look at their expected goals and their goals against numbers. They're more towards the middle of the league. But they are still taking a lot of penalties. And that was the problem for them last night against Minnesota. I think both Minnesota goals were on the power play last night, actually. That's a problem for them. So I do like Pittsburgh 1 here. Pittsburgh 2, their numbers have been getting worse. They had a really good, I think Malkin tore it up for the first 5 or 6 games. Since then, there hasn't really been a lot from the second line. Honestly, I think the Pitt 3 line is kind of in play. There are super expensive stacks on this slate, whether it's Colorado or Edmonton or Toronto. Ehlers, Zahorna, and Drew O'Connor have been playing fine. If you want a 2-man out of that and use them as part of a lineup that has an expensive stack, I think that's fine. But it is Pittsburgh 1 I like best in this game. I'll have to see what warmups look like for Buffalo, because if they do have Peterka on the top line, I would be kind of interested. Tristan Jarry's starting, and the coach had to make a note to say that his vision's fine, which is it makes me think of that Seinfeld skit with it was something with McCann. He's like, no, it's not fine. You know what I mean? It's if you have to tell everybody that your goaltender can see, it's I have some concerns. I have a couple questions about this. So if Peterka's on the top line, I might be tempted to swap again to Buffalo 1, but it is Pittsburgh 1 I like the most in this game by a wide margin, regardless of price.
Yeah, Sullivan, the biggest coach speak bullshitter in the NHL. So, there's definitely questions with his vision. Arizona Coyotes, 2.8 total, heading into Nashville. Great city, by the way. Nashville Predators have a 3.2 total. I had this game circled last night when I was starting to go over this slate, and I got rewarded with no ownership here. Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, Barrett Hayton, 16,900, 1.2% projected ownership per our top stacks tool. Now, the price has come down, even though Keller is super expensive, because Hayton's got off to a weird start. Schmaltz, not exactly the most high-volume shooter in the land. That was his problem in Chicago. He has started to shoot more in Arizona, specifically last year. But, Nashville's penalty kill, not very good. Defensively, McDonough's out. That really hurts them. Yeah, the O'Reilly Forsberg line has been good, but like without McDonough, I'll let you give the exact expected goals against numbers, but they've gone up. Penalty kill's not very good. For 16,900, I'm all aboard the Coyotes train. And then on the flip side, yeah, there's a little bit of negative leverage on Nashville 1. I like them, but then you get down to the second line at 11,900, a little bit negative leverage as well. Like if you're looking to jam in one of these expensive stacks, like Novak, Evangelista, Sherwood on the short list for filler stacks that I like as well. A lot to like in this game.
Yeah, there is. And it worries me because, I was telling you before the show, if this feels like one of those games where it's going to be 2-1 with 50 total shots or 7-5 and both goalies get yanked. Like, I don't think this is going to be like a 4-2 game with spread out goal scoring or something like that. Without Ryan McDonough, it's been 4 games for Nashville without Ryan McDonough in the lineup. In that stretch, they're giving up 35.5 shots against per 60 minutes at all strengths. Only 3 teams have given up more shots per minute in that stretch. Their expected goals against numbers are between Ottawa and Vancouver, and Ottawa, that's with Ottawa missing half their blue line. So their numbers, like Carrier and McDonough were one of the better defensive pairs in the league through the first 8 or 9 games, basically right up until McDonough got hurt. And Nashville's penalty kill, you mentioned it, their penalty kill has not been good this year. It's one reason why I wrote up Clayton Keller in the picks article today. The Nashville penalty kill giving up the 3rd most shot attempts on the season per minute on the penalty kill and 2nd most goals per minute. They're not a team that generally takes a ton of penalties. They're actually in the bottom 1/3 of the league by power play opportunities given to the opponent, but they're still giving up a power play goal against per game because their penalty kill has been so bad. And the weird thing about Arizona is over the last the previous 3 or 4 years, a big reason why Clayton Keller wasn't a monster producer was their power play wasn't very good. He averaged, I think I noted in the article, it was 16 power play points every 82 games. In this era of the NHL, top forwards are easily over 25. A lot of them are over 30. Some will get over 40 power play points. And when you're putting up 16, guys will put up twice as many as you. Comparable top forwards will put up twice as many as you. That's changed this year. He has 7 power play points in 13 games. The top unit has been really, really good together. The price is not expensive, 16,900. I'll bring up top stacks just to show everybody. 1.1% ownership, 3% top stack. And the other thing is there aren't a lot of stacks in that price range on DraftKings tonight that I particularly like. There is a world where there's a Carolina stack that we talked about earlier that I might want to get to. But other than that, it's the Pitt 2 line that I just talked about that I didn't want to play. It's the Ottawa 2 line that I said I didn't want to play as much as their top line. It's the Washington lines that we talked about that we didn't want to play. It's Vancouver that we didn't want. There's just a lot of lines other than basically Los Angeles and Nashville. Nashville on the other side of this game, Los Angeles later on the slate. Other than that, there's just not a lot in that price range that I necessarily want to play. So if I'm going to get to a line in that price range, it is almost certainly going to be Arizona 1. It's not a great 5-on-5 matchup for them, but I don't think it's a bad one. And the big problem is that they haven't been scoring at 5-on-5, but it's going to turn around eventually, right? 3 expected goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. I was looking last year because Keller had a really good season last year, right? I was looking last year and there was a stretch January into February where it was a 14-game stretch where they had basically an identical goal scoring rate at 5-on-5 that they had to start this season. And Keller still finished this season with 86 points or something like that. So it's just a little bit of bad luck. It's a good power play spot. They're coming in with no ownership. I like Arizona 1 quite a bit here. I don't mind going back to Arizona 2. I think it was Krause that scored in the last game, that game against St. Louis.
It was a power play 1 goal and Krause scored.
They've been getting some power play time, and they all play the same power play unit together. So it's just as good of a power play matchup as it is for them as it is for the top line. They just, it'll be a 65-35 split in power play time or 60-40 or something like that. But I don't mind Arizona 2 either. But I do like Arizona 1 the most here. I don't mind Nashville too. I don't mind them to the point where I actually wrote them up in the picks article. The reason for that is because Tommy Novak got moved to the top power play unit for Nashville in their last game. Now, whether that holds or not, we'll see, because they have at times used Novak on the top power play unit and then booted him off the very next game. But Arizona's given up 22 power plays over the last 5 games and 12 power play goals against in 13 games on the season. Negative leverage by top stacks, sure, but I think they're a fine filler to use with the more expensive stacks elsewhere on the slate. So I do like Nashville too here. I just think I like Arizona 1 the best in this game.
Yeah, me too. Quick Party says Glass is a game time decision. Not sure where he would slot in, but like he has been on power play 1 in the past.
Yeah, I mean, at worst, I think he would go to the top line and replace Nyquist, but I don't see them breaking up their top 6 right now. Like, I know they just got their brains beaten by Winnipeg, and they have lost 4 or 5, but I think it's been more missing Ryan McDonough than it's been anything offensively. So,
yeah, tell Brunette that. See, some of these coaches do some weird things, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we are sponsored by Vivid Picks, and you can get a $300 deposit match, which is 3 times higher than the standard deposit match of $100. The only way to get this is clicking the link in the description below. Your first entry comes with a $25 secure play, so if your first entry loses, you get refunded up to $25 in Vivid site credit. All you have to do is predict whether players will have more or less than their projected stats across multiple sports and combine your selections for bigger payouts. So make sure to click that link in the description below. You're not going to find a $300 deposit match bonus very often, so take advantage of that. Let's move to the late games. Let's start with the St. Louis Hostas. The Blues have a 2.5 total heading into Colorado. The Avs have a 3.6 total. Arturi Lehkonen is week to week. He is out, obviously, tonight. That moves Valery Nichushkin to the top power play unit. I don't know if that means he's going to move to the top line. We were kind of conjecturing before the show. We think Drouin is going to start up there and, maybe play his, 13 minutes or whatever. So that is a big discount from Lehkonen. I don't really have too much interest in Drouin up there. Now, the thing is, like, if you want a power play stack, I guess it's fine, but like the Blues just don't take a bunch of penalties, but when they do, their penalty kill hasn't been great. I think, you do something like McKinnon, Rantanen, and then Makar, which is really, really expensive, but there is a ton of value on this slate that you can jam in. You want to go to Colorado too. I think that is fine. Assuming, Ryan Johansson and Valery Nichushkin are together. If it's Riley Tuft or it's whomever on that second line, I think that's a good filler line. On the Blues side, it's just maybe some Shen Kairu, but like really you're going to go on a 10-game slate playing a 2.5 road total in Colorado. Like it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I do think it's probably going to be Drouin on the top line. Unless they're really like beating St. Louis's brains in, which is very, very possible here tonight. Like, let's not get that twisted. Drouin's probably not lasting the whole game on the top line. Like, that's the thing. Is like if this is even a 3-1 game for Colorado at the end of the second period, Nichushkin's going to the top line. Like, that's just the way that this team is run. And yeah, you're right. They don't take a lot of penalties. They're also giving up the 6th most power play goals against per 60 minutes. So like they're having a real hard time killing off any penalties that they do take. I do like Colorado 1 here tonight. Like you can play Drouin. The top line has been scoring even with him there, but it's almost in spite of him, not because of him in any sort of way. Like I would have a hard time putting Jonathan Drouin in my lineup tonight. Like I would just go with Nichushkin and just go with the power play stack and then be on my way. Like they're going to be going up against the St. Louis top line with Kapanen in there. That lines up to 3.3 expected goals against per 60 minutes. You combine that with a bad penalty kill and voila, you have a pretty good spot for Colorado 1 here. So Yeah, I do like Colorado 1. I think a lot of people are going to like Colorado 1 here tonight. That's why Top Stacks Tool has them at 12%, but we're still waiting for the update with Lehkonen out, and we think Drouin in. We want to make that clear. We think it's going to be Drouin on the top line. They haven't had a practice with lines since the Lehkonen injury, so we're all just guessing here. I imagine if Drouin's up there and that line's price comes down $3,000, that ownership's going up to 20% or something like that, right? So it's going to be a lot of people playing Colorado here tonight. Like, if you want to just use Nichushkin and Johansson and Tufte instead, I think that's fine. Like, there's no St. Louis matchup that concerns me. Still get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. They might not want to, play their top stars, 22, 23 minutes because it is the Blues. They should be able to hand them pretty easily. So I don't mind Colorado too either. On the St. Louis side, here's the thing is, like, if Nichushkin is on the top line, like, that second line's not very good defensively, right? And I could see a world where that Shen Kairu sideline does have a good game against Colorado too. I just think it'd be more of an MME play than a single entry. Like, a single entry play, I'm not playing St. Louis 2 on the road against Colorado. Like, that's just, I'm not insane. So for me, it's Colorado 1 or nothing out of this game. I just want to shout out Lehkonen. Like, that, they're saying it's not a head injury.
It's a head injury. No,
they said it's not a head injury. It's a neck injury. That's the problem.
Oh yeah.
They said he's going to be. They said weeks, not an official timeline. That they said it's going to be weeks with no official timeline, and it's not a head injury tells me there's something probably pretty wrong here. So, he was one of my favorite players to watch for the Habs. Just hope everything kind of works out for him. He can get back on the ice eventually.
Sounds like it's a disc issue in his neck then. But yeah, what worries me about this Avs game with Lehkonen out? I just had a horror show vision in my head that they're going to go Drouin, McKinnon, Nichushkin, and then the second line of Rantanen, Rijo.
I mean, for me, it doesn't really matter. There's only four guys worth playing, and they're all in the same power play unit. Like, that's just kind of the way I look at it.
Emoji. Let's move on to another game that has a lot of questions that need to be answered, and they will be answered tonight. The Edmonton Oilers with a 3.4 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3.1 total. Edmonton going with these stupid idiot lines of McDavid, Hyman, McLeod, Draisaitl, Fogle, Holloway, Nugent Hopkins, Kane, Gagne. If they fall down like 1-0, 2-0 in the first period, you're going to see Draisaitl and McDavid together.
They don't even have to be losing. It could be tied.
Yeah. And there's no ownership on McDavid or Draisaitl. Like, none. It's a 10-game slate. Like, the one thing that scares me the most in NHL DFS is low-owned McDavid when you're fading him. I like, if he's matchup proof, like we played him going into Bergeron last year at 5%. Now he's 5% going up against the Kraken. How do you not play Edmonton here tonight?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back a couple of years here. 2 years ago, Connor McDavid, like before his 153-point season, he had a year with 44 goals and 123 points. Obviously, that's an unbelievable offensive season. In that season, he had a stretch from December to January where he had 13 points in 14 games, or under a point per game, and was shooting 5.6%. He still finished the year with 44 goals and 79 assists, okay? That same year, Leon Draisaitl had 55 goals and 55 assists. He also had a stretch from the end of November to early January with 14 points in 17 games, under a point per game. I love ragging on the Oilers. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's just below the Leafs, just above Vancouver. The thing is like, if this were happening in January with the Oilers already comfortably in a playoff spot, nobody would care. You know what I mean? Players go through slumps all the time. I just highlighted a 55-goal season from Draisaitl and a 123-point season from McDavid, where they were producing worse than they are right now. And you were talking about ownership. There it is, 5.8% McDavid, 5.2% on Hyman, basically 3% and lower on the rest. Now, I think McDavid comes up a little bit, but like Max is out at like 10%, right? And if I, even on a 10-game slate, if I can get McDavid at 10%, or if I can get Draisaitl at 7%, or if I can get Nugent Hopkins at 4 or 5%, I'm playing them. I don't care what they've done through the first month of the season. They've straight up been one of the, argued probably the unluckiest team by shooting percentage compared to expected goals so far this season. They've gone through stretches like this before and still absolutely dominated opponents over the course of a full season. It's getting to the point now where I'm just going to play Edmonton, I think, every single slate until they do smash, because they are going to break out. They are going to absolutely embarrass opponents eventually. And I want to get in on the ground floor before it happens and not after. So I really do like Edmonton here. I didn't even write down their stats because they don't matter. Like, I'm serious. I research every game and I make like 3 or 4 pages of notes. I didn't put anything for Edmonton other than those 2 stretches where McDavid and Draisaitl struggled a couple years ago. I'm like 95% sure I'm going to have some sort of Edmonton stack. It's just figuring out what to do. Like, Draisaitl and Foegele have played pretty well together so far this season. I think it's a triple center stack. Now, if you want to use Draisaitl, McDavid, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Now, Seattle doesn't take a lot of penalties, but their penalty kill, not very good so far this year. Their 5-on-5 lines have not been very good either. The Seattle top line with McCann there, 3.3 expected goals against, 4.2 actual goals against per 60 minutes so far this season. The second line, 69 shot attempts against per 60 minutes. I'm talking about the Andy Gord line. 69 shot attempts against per 60 minutes is really bad. I really like the Edmonton side here. It's just a matter of which guys do you want to play. I'm probably going to center mine around Leon Draisaitl. If you want to center yours around McDavid and Hyman, go right ahead. But I am firmly on the Edmonton side here tonight. As far as Seattle goes, there's like McCann and Beniers and Yamamoto would probably be the stack I would go to. I just wish it was somebody other than Yamamoto on the top line. Right?
Yamamoto revenge, baby.
Yeah, like I get it. Andy is cheap, and him and Beniers are on the same power play unit. It's just Yamamoto's not any good. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't make it work, I've said it in a show earlier this season. If you can't make it work with McDavid and Draisaitl, I don't know what you're doing on a top line with Matty Beniers. You know what I mean? Like, so he since being moved up, he has four shots in 4 games. He's just getting cardio. For me, it's going to the to the Bjorkstrand, Tolvin, and Gord line, or nothing else from Seattle. I like the Edmonton side way more here.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, we broke the number 1 cardinal rule of DFS. We played McDavid going into Bergeron last year. He's matchup proof. It's the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah. I mean, I will, highlight that, McDavid only scored 2 goals in 2 games against Boston last year. The best team we've seen in a generation.
Yeah. Then they lost in the first round. You hate to see it, but you also love to see it. Anyway, let's move to the last game of the night. The Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.7 total heading into Los Angeles. Our Kings have a 3.8 total. That's a rather large total. I don't know if Carter Hart's going to be able to play.
Yeah, they're saying he's going to start.
Okay.
And they're saying Bobby Brink's out.
Bob the Brink is out. Probably a healthy scratch because Torts didn't like the way he smiled at him.
No, it is a healthy scratch. Even some of the beat writers were like, not really sure why Bobby Brink's being scratched, but anyways.
Probably winked at Torts and Torts drop kicked him and decided to scratch him because he's old school. Anyway, you shared in our Discord this morning how good the top line of Los Angeles One has been, and their numbers after their Australia trip are just pretty ridiculous. They're getting no ownership here. Now, Carter Hart in net compared to Cal Peterson, maybe changes a little bit. I really like the Kings top line here. Kempe has been shooting the puck a ton. Kopitar is Kopitar. He's, not the player he was 5 years ago, but that line has been tremendous. Quentin Byfield on the second power play unit, which has been the better one. So they're 16-5. They're in that mid-range, getting no ownership. I think they're fine. You want to go to Pierre-Luc Dubois, Kevin Fiala, also fine. You want to go to Deneau, Trevor Moore, Kaliev, also fine. Now, you said they called up Jared Anderson-Dolan. We haven't seen a corresponding move yet. They might be sending LaFerriere down. They might have an injury. That's something to keep in mind. I do like the Kings. I do also like Hart. It doesn't have to be.
Just seeing now, new lineup. New lineup got posted just as we were going on the air. Fiala, Deneau, Trevor Moore, LaFerriere, Dubois, Kaliev. They didn't say there's any changes to the top line, so I think the top line stays as is. But they're going to Fiala. They're moving Fiala to the line with Deneau and Moore. They're breaking up that line, and they're moving Kaliev with Dubois and LaFerriere, which that looks like the third line to me now.
Yeah. It's interesting that they would move Fiala with Deneau and Moore, but that also says to me that I don't know who they're going to send out against top comp. Not that it matters, really, but it kind of says to me they might be sending out Kopitar against Couturier, but I still like that Kings top line. What are you thinking about these lines?
I mean, I still like it. I figured they were going to – because they called up Jared Anderson-Dolan, and you and I figured it was because they're just going to move LaFerriere off that line and maybe move Anderson-Dolan there. I don't think Fiala and Dubois have been perfectly fine this year. They're outscoring the opposition. They're over 3 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're not a problem whatsoever, but they also haven't looked as good as you might expect them to, I think is kind of the thing. You would expect a Fiala-Dubois line to probably be this team's best offensive line, right? And it just hasn't been. It's been their third best offensive line. So I think that's part of it. But yeah, the Kings top line, you mentioned the Australia trip. The Kings went to Australia for a couple preseason games, and basically that, upon their return, missed a week of training camp. And then their very first 2 games to start the regular season were Colorado and Carolina. So, a trip to halfway around the world, you miss a week of training camp, and then you get 2 genuine cup contenders as your very first games. Okay, they didn't look very good. Since those 2 games, the top line, 78 shot attempts per 60 minutes of 5-on-5, which is patently absurd. You'll see power plays lower than that. 3.8 expected goals per 60 minutes, 4.2 actual goals per 60 minutes. They've just been dominating the opponents. Matchups don't really matter for me on the Philly side. You don't want to necessarily go into Sean Couturier, but like I was saying on the show yesterday, Noah Cates is probably one of the best young two-way centers in the league. So I don't know if going into Noah Cates is really a whole lot better. If he moves up and plays with Travis Konechny, or they scratch Morgan Frost or whatever Torst, insanity Torst decides to unleash on that lineup here tonight. It is Kings one that I do like the best in this game. It is interesting that Deneau, Moore, and Fiala are playing together. I don't think that's going to be a very high-owned combination, and it was an over-leveraged line. The second and third lines were both over-leveraged by the top stacks tool. I'll bring it up one last time for the show. 7% and 9% with the old second and third lines. I got to imagine that Fiala, Deneau, and Moore is going to be a lot lower owned than 7 or 8%. So I don't mind going to that line either, but we also don't know how they're going to play. So I would probably just prefer going back to the Kings top line here. Nothing for me from Philly. This is a brutal matchup.
Yeah, I am not surprised that they moved Dubois to the third line, because ideally, I think when Arvidsson comes back, you're going to see Quentin Byfield be the third center, and they're going to move Dubois to the wing. Just conjecture.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do that, but I mean, it would kind of make sense in a way, I guess. But I don't know why they're tinkering with it so much. They've been the best team in the league basically for 3 weeks now.
Coaches, man.
I guess.
That's the slate. Coming up after us at 5 p.m., NBA Live Before Lock with Emac and Neil. So if you are an NBA slappy, tune in for that. I don't play NBA, but NBA is a grind, man. If you play NBA every night, God bless you, man. That is just a grind. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen and goalies. Cale Makar, Roman Josi, Noah Dobson, Quinn Hughes, the top 4 most expensive D-men on the night. Charlie McAvoy, Evan Bouchard right under that. Like, I think Makar is a good play tonight. I think all these guys are a good play, obviously. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just sighing.
Oh.
I
sorry, I didn't have the camera on. I thought, but anyway, Dobson's the interesting one. If they have a full lineup at 7K, I might take a pass there on the defense.
They're saying Pellick's out tonight.
Then Dobson's in play. I like all these. Like McAvoy back is probably my favorite in that range. Quinn Hughes, but yeah, who are you liking for the top mid-range guys?
I mean, right at the top, I like Roman Josi. Like, I know he hasn't exactly lived up to what people want, but he's still had a pretty good season so far this year. He's over 3 shots per game, 1.5 blocks per game. Just not racking up the assists that people want, but that'll come around eventually. I wrote up Erik Karlsson in the picks article. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's just a really, really good Pittsburgh matchup. He's not putting up a lot of peripherals, which I think might keep some people away from him. I don't mind him here for 6K in a really good power play spot. McAvoy for the same reason, really good power play spot against Montreal. Like the middle guys, like Sergachev at home to Carolina, I think makes a lot of sense where he's under 5K on DraftKings. Morgan Riley running the top power play unit for Toronto is one of my favorite defense plays on the slate here tonight. Noah Hannafin's been priced down for Calgary. Jacob Chikrin on the other side of the game. I don't mind those 2 defensemen in that game. There's some super cheap guys here that I think are in play tonight. Like Jake McCabe, yeah, he's a bad defenseman, but he's 2,500. He's going to play 19 to 20 minutes for Toronto. He's fine. Troy Stetcher for Arizona. Like they have 4 defensemen. They all play like 18, 19 minutes each. And Stetcher plays 2,500 on DraftKings. Don't mind him. I wrote up Sean Walker for the Flyers. He's been getting close to 22 minutes a game over this last little stretch. He's a guy that can put up a lot of peripherals. They might need it. He may need to block a lot of shots against the Kings here tonight. Sean Walker for sure. Rasmus Sandin. He was playing a lot of minutes anyway. Martin Fairbury got hurt last night. Don't think he's going to play tonight. I guess we'll see at warm-ups, but Sandin might end up having to play 24, 25 minutes here. Dmitry Orlov running the top power play for Carolina. Don't mind him for cheap as well.
Yeah, the one note on Sandin, he did get hurt briefly and left the game yesterday, but did come back. Just monitor that. We just won't know until warm-ups, but yeah, agreed there. Let's move on to goalies here. Swayman confirmed at the top, 8,500. Need a shutout at 8,500 in GPPs, but down at the bottom, Dikembe Mutombo, 6,900. Carter Hart, 7K, kind of interesting there. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, 7,100 is going to see some volume. Connor Ingram's going to see some volume. The one that stands out to me is Thatcher Demko, 7,500. He's been playing great. Toronto's on a back-to-back. They're a pretty high-volume team. Who else you liking?
Yeah, I like that Demko call. I wrote up Joonas Korpisalo for the picks article. He's, I think Stochastic has him with the most expected saves here tonight, and also only around 3 goals against, which isn't really that bad. So I do like Korpisalo here against Calgary. I like both goalies in that game. I'm going to be honest. Like if Dustin Wolf can kind of live up to this height, I think he's probably underpriced at where he is, even if it is a road matchup. So don't mind Wolf at 7,600. Like if you're going to go like way, way down dumpster diving, I think Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for Buffalo makes sense. Like when I look at teams like that in this spot here tonight, it's like, how does Buffalo win this game tonight? It's probably not by a 7-5 game, right? It's probably because Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen saves 37 of 38 and they win 3-1 or something like that. Like, I think that's kind of the way that I look at it. So I don't mind him if you really need the dumpster dive. Same thing with Carter Hart at 7K. I don't know if he still has the out tag or not on DraftKings. He might not, but okay, 7K. I mean, 7K against the Kings. It's another one of those situations where the Flyers aren't going to beat the Kings by, scoring 8 goals. They're going to beat the Kings because Carter Hart saved a pile of pucks. So the 2 cheap guys I like here tonight are Luukkonen and Hart.
Yeah. Yeah, Dustin Wolf. I forgot to mention Dustin Wolf. Like, it's not the best spot for him. He did have a start, and it's not his first career NHL start, so he's not going to have like those massive jitters. But I think he played against the Sharks at the end of last season. But yeah, again, I'm a cheap goalie guy. Give me the volume. Give me that. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go with our Desert Dogs, and I'm going to go with the guy I wrote up in the picks article today. I think it's the second time I picked him this year. Hopefully he comes through for me. I'm going Clayton Keller.
I'm not going to be no nonsense or give you some nonsense with how Marner sucks and all that kind of jazz. I'm going Valeri Nichushkin, our boy. And, we've been Valeri Nichushkin boys since the days in Dallas where he got sent back to like Uzbekistan or Russia, or he went and played in Russia for a few years, came back, and yeah, big Nichushkin guy.
Yeah, real big Nichushkin heads over here.
Yeah. All right, so that is the slate. We will be back on Tuesday, I believe. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe button on the way out if you are interested in premium. Click that link in the description below. We'll see you in the Discord tonight, and good luck, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.